For sure. All right. So, Bill Wallace is our topic today. Back in the recording booth with Mr. Dring, gonna talk with your history and experience with Superfoot. So, how did that all get started?
Uh, are we back? Good. I'm back. You're locked up on us just a second. So my experience with Bill Wallace, I guess my first recollection would be staring at, as a kid, staring at the movie screen at the movie theater, watching A Force of One with Chuck Norris, where Bill Wallace was Sparky and played the bad guy. And but man, his kicking ability and his flexibility left such an impression on me as a teenager and a fledgling martial artist that I mean, he was that kind of I don't know, he was immediately became a martial art hero of mine. And of course, back then, he was in all the magazines. Is he still? I mean, it's hard to pick up a karate magazine, black belt, whatever, and not see something about Bill Wallace. But back then, I mean, he was mad popular. And so that was my introduction to Bill. Then kind of fast forward into the 80s, he did seminars in Little Rock and in Memphis that I attended. And then my real relationship with him, though, started, I guess, about 1995. I got to teach at a superstar, all-star karate camp, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was invited to teach that with Joe Louis. And it was Joe Louis, Bill Wallace, Dr. Beasley, Jerry Beasley, and I was one of the invited featured instructors under those guys. And so that was my first time to get to teach with them. And then, I taught at the karate college for about a dozen years, and Bill was there. And of course, he and Joe were such great friends that anytime Joe had a camp, Bill was there, and we just got to train together. And it's funny because it was shortly after I started teaching with them that I started having my hip issues. And Bill was somebody I could talk to because he was still kicking, he was still moving, he was still active, and yet I knew that he had hip surgeries. I mean, I think he's had now 3 replacements. He's had one done twice, one once, one done twice. So to see him kick at the level that he can kick and maintain the flexibility, I mean, in his 70s, that man still pick his foot up and stick his big toe in your ear for you real fast, and can kick. I mean, just getting out and doing his seminars and his camps.
Still there? Kind of froze up.
Anybody else, I mean. To perform. So very, very, very impressive.
Yeah, that is. I mean, so what his story of how he became Superfoot. I know you mentioned that a little bit on the last podcast, but he got an injury training judo, and then that kind of, spawned his nickname and sort of his lead leg capabilities. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. Had a guy fall off of his hip and land on the side of his knee and tear his knee out, and training injury, and he was in Okinawa in a leg cast and saw some guys doing karate, and when they would do the kicks with their right leg. He just kept kicking with his left leg. So he was able to develop his own style. And it's interesting to me too, because he actually trained under the same guy in Okinawa that Joe Louis had trained with in Okinawa. And yet they ultimately developed radically different styles, but they came from the same base. And, I think that's a great example of what the Brazilians call game. I mean, we, in jiu-jitsu, you can have the same, in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we have the same stock set of techniques, right? But people hybrid and innovate and develop their own particular Joe, and looking at their base style coming out of Okinawa, training with the same instructor, and yet developing really individual styles, personal styles that maximized, their God-given potential.
So what years would Bill Wallace and Joe Louis would have been in Okinawa? Do you recall?
That is
like
60s,
50s.
Know.
Yeah.
No. So it would have been in the 60s.
Okay. So kind of like pre.
And I know Joe was there. Joe had been gone for about a year. It was definitely the Vietnam era. Joe had been gone for about a year before Bill got there. So this would have been in the 60s.
Yeah. And okay, so I've got a book in here that's a collection of all the I'm sure there's been more written, but a bunch of the Black Belt magazine articles about Bill. It's just a book of articles written about him, right? It's a collection of articles. But you mentioned him being in a force of one, and I know he was pretty tightly connected with Hollywood, right? I mean, he was in more movies than just that, and I know he worked with a lot of celebrities and stuff. Is that correct?
Yes. I lost you there for just a minute, so if I drop some of your question, please reprompt me. My computer froze up. He worked with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. He was, he worked with Elvis Presley, and actually worked for Elvis, teaching at a school that Elvis had there in Memphis. The Bill Wallace story, honestly, is fascinating. I mean, it's a slice of American martial art history. Here you've got a guy that is known as and innovated his lead leg kicking style and the option-oriented offense. And people have studied, and he's influenced tens of thousands of kickers. Just, I don't think anybody's had a more profound influence on kicking methodology or kicking style. I mean, one person. So Bill, the preeminent kicker, world's greatest kicker, hands down. But he was a wrestler. He and it has got a phenomenal ground game. I mean, I think a couple of my favorite judo seminar I ever been to was one that Bill taught. It just I identify and I really relate to his teaching style. So I thought he did wonderful. Wrestling seminars and things that he's taught that I've had, the good fortune of going to are absolutely fantastic because he's a great coach, so it's interesting. And, at a lot of his black belt conferences, he's asked me to teach some submission. So he's pretty well-rounded for a guy that's known as body style, the point style, above the waist kicking. He's also pretty non-traditional in some of his approaches and his methodology. So I think that's fascinating. And his work with like Elvis Presley and I think gave him in of course his stardom as a champion, as a kickboxer, opened some Hollywood doors for him. And in addition to a movie with Chuck Norris, I know he's been on movies with like I think Jackie Chan and Jet Li. I couldn't even begin to name all the people that he's worked with. That's for sure. I know that for a while he was working as a bodyguard and trainer for John Belushi, and through John Belushi met Dan Aykroyd and I guess Joe Piscopo and a bunch of those kind of people. He was actually the one that discovered when John Belushi died. He was the one, the studio, I think, called him and asked them to check on him. And he went to the room and actually found John, which, still a tragic loss for the comedic world and whatnot. But very interesting listening to the history of martial arts and movies. I mean, that was one of for me personally, I mean, when you're childhood, I use the word childhood loosely, but, as a young man, teenager, to have one of your heroes to get to teach with and then be asked to, and then ultimately get rank from and hang out with. And I'm in awe sitting around and listening to his stories, because when he's gone, it's going to be a slice of Americana. I mean, you don't really realize like the profound effect of the Joe Louis. Unfortunately, a lot of times isn't necessarily recognized until after they're gone. But I think that's made me treasure my time with Bill all that much more, is because you realize just what a profound influence he's had on and continues to have. At the last year in Las Vegas at the Martial Arts Super Show, the room, he packed out a seminar at 7:00 in the morning in Las Vegas. Like, who's up at 7 a.m. in Las Vegas? Well, there was hundreds of martial artists that were up stretching and kicking with Bill Wallace. And that's pretty impressive that he still has that kind of drawing power in his 70s. I mean, and it just speaks to his personality and his legacy. I mean, he gets out there and he's fun. I mean, he's got a great sense of humor, but he's still bringing relative information. I mean, his stretching methodology, I've humbly stolen, used. in the gym stretching, trying to maintain my flexibility. So I'm still using, I using Bill's stretching. His kicking and that option oriented, establish a technique. I call it the option oriented offense. It's like a football team that, runs up the middle, fakes up the middle and pitches out and, or throws a pass. I mean, Bill's options, the way he establishes his side kick, hook kick, ground kick, and has developed up. I mean, he was a world champion with 5 techniques. He had a left jab or a straight left, a left hook, side kick, hook kick, ground kick. And everybody knew he was going to do it. Just nobody could stop him. He was undefeated as a kickboxer. And that reading the defense, being able to establish your offense, he's done it in a way nobody else has. But what a great, I think, strategy that you can apply to so many aspects of the martial arts, right? I mean, You can apply it to your boxing. You can apply it to your kicking. You can apply it to your grappling. And that idea of it's not how much you know, it's how well you know what you know. And then being able to apply it so flawlessly that nobody can stop it. And there's other examples, but I think Bill personifies that kind of philosophy. And along the way, I mean, he had some professional boxing matches. His footwork methodology that he employs to be able to set up his stuff. His distancing, it's one of the things that to be a great kicker, you got to be able to maintain kicking distance. And to do that, you got to be able to move. You've got to have good footwork. You've got to be able to distance. You've got to be able to get in, and you got to be able to get out and get out of the way. And he does that so flawlessly. That's another real. So when you start kind of peeling the layers of the onion, you start coming up with some of these other things that go along with. And of course, I think Bill was blessed with some fast twitch muscle fiber. That's definitely a gift from God. To be able to have that speed. There's certain genetic predisposition there, but that doesn't genetic predisposition in anything. It's the old, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. But when talent works hard, you've got a champion, and Bill to this day, works out very, very, very hard. It's not it wasn't just an accident. You can say, oh yeah, he's got great fast twitch muscle fiber, which he does, but that doesn't mean anything if you're not in the gym grinding for hours at a time. And he'll still get out and at his seminars, watch his volume of kicks. And I'm blessed to get to train with him several times every year. And he throws as many kicks as in teaching his seminars. He's throwing as many kicks as anybody else out there, and moves. I like watching his movement. It's impressive to me how the man can still move.
Oh, I know. It's amazing. Anytime I've been around him, you just can't believe he's that age, So what could you say about, I know he has an amazing organization in which you're a part of, and in which is also at least nationwide here in the United States, but what could you say about the Superfoot systems?
Man, what a great collection of guys. With people that are involved from all different styles. Kicking kind of transcends. I've always been one that I look for efficacy and just not dogma. I've always kind of tried to push the envelope and finding things that work really, really well. And, I study, I'm no Bill Wallace by any stretch of the imagination, but I've certainly studied and tried to incorporate what I've learned from Bill into my training, just like, I've not the size, strength, or, I'm no Joe trying to incorporate and round myself out as a martial artist. Well, I'm not the only person that feels that way, right? A lot of us do. And so you've got guys from all kinds of different styles of martial art that train with Bill. And I've got to meet Michael J. White. I was on the testing panel beside Bill when Michael J. White tested and got his black belt with Bill, which he's phenomenal. Michael J. is just a phenomenal martial artist. And of course, all kinds of acting credits, his own bad self. Big old boy. And but definitely an impressive martial artist, and it was impressive watching him go through that testing, because Bill's black belt testing is quite grueling. Picking that leg up and kicking over and over and over is intense, and I think that's a bond too. Anybody that's gone through and held that leg up into the air and held it there and thrown a million kicks, until feels like your leg's going to fall off, and that's kind of a common bond. There's affiliates in England. There's people in Australia. I mean, Bill travels Europe quite a bit. Of course, he fought over in Europe quite a bit and made some good friendships over there, and across the United States. And there's been really fortunate to meet some really, really, really quality martial artists. And we do try to get together. We were supposed to have a camp in Memphis. Matter of fact, it would have been this coming weekend, and with COVID, obviously, it's been canceled. We're hoping to reschedule that for tentatively. I think it's scheduled for the first weekend in November, where we'll get together and train with Bill, and then myself and some of the other black belts also teach various seminars, and we will run. Typically, there's testing. Bill has people that are looking for black belt or for higher rank of black belt. We have a testing opportunity, so that's coming up. And I encourage anybody watching, if you're interested in finding out more about the Superfoot organization or diving deeper into some of Bill's methodology, please reach out to me. I love getting to share things that I've learned from Bill, and it's always fun helping people that want to test for rank under Bill. It's a nice signature and certificate to have on the wall, and he's a great guy to support. I think it fills out. There's like Bruce Lee said, outfighting, infighting, trapping, grappling on the mat. Well, that kicking methodology, the outfighting, and being able to expand your knowledge in a certain area. I think that's absolutely great. And I love studying Bill's stuff for that stuff's sake. There's aspects of it that I apply every time I spar, and it's just fascinating to me. I really enjoy learning his methodology. And then from an academic point of view, I think it's cool when you can, do things stylistically in that bubble. There's a time to be able to just old school Western boxing, this method or that method. Philly boxing is different than LA boxing, which is going to look different than what they're doing in Atlanta or at the Crunk Gym in Detroit, right? People have flares and styles. And I think it's cool when you can look at styles of martial art and employ, well, this is this style, this is that style, and run it separately, and then go here's how I blend, because there is a blending. And ultimately, if you can find, and Bill's real fond of saying, look, if you can just take an idea, if you can work some of this stuff, and it helps you out, great, and you've seen there's like Wonder Boy Thompson. He's somebody that's been able to kind of take a side stance and employ his lead leg in the use that in maybe a non-traditional stuff, and would love to have them come work out, come train. And as we get more information, I'll be posting up information about the camp in Memphis. So
I would love to come to that too. Yeah. Is that going to be, I just had Robbie Beard on, and he was talking about maybe having Bill in towards the end of the year. Is he going to be hosting that?
I don't think Robbie's hosting it, but I know he's going to be there.
Cool.
And of course, with the changes, I was just talking with Terry Dow. Terry's in Manchester, New Hampshire, and he puts on a big martial arts symposium every year that I've been teaching at now for about 10 years, and always has Bill in, and I was just visiting with Terry yesterday about when the next conference, about the conference, and so everything right now is a little bit up in the air because everybody's, COVID. I mean, it's kind of the default, right? I mean, it's just kind of got everything up in the air, but we're looking to hopefully get that nailed down. I mean, from what Terry understood, Bill wants to do it, and that's kind of an anniversary. He wanted to go back to the old school where he was teaching at, and maybe go to a Graceland, and there's a lot of history with Bill in Memphis, and still guys there that trained with them, like Robbie, and there's several other old timers that are there that I think Bill wanted to incorporate that predate Robbie and I, but definitely would be our seniors in the martial arts, right? So that they're going to be involved, and what a great opportunity for us as Arkansans, because a lot of times these camps are in Florida, which it can be difficult for some of us to travel to, right? I mean, I make it a point to be there, but it's hard for me to drag a lot of my students, and it's hard to introduce a lot of people at times when you're having to, go travel across the country and camps and everything else. But this one is in our own backyard. I mean, you're talking 2-3 hours to Memphis. And so once they get this nailed down and we get it set up, definitely hope you can make it, and anybody else that's out there, and for people that are, I'm working with a few people trying to get them ready to test for black belt with Bill, and it's, holding that leg up in the air and throwing a million kicks. His black belt testing's pretty involved. I mean, there's a lot of his footwork methodology, his boxing, definitely his kicking, a lot of sparring, a lot of combinations. It'll wear you out. It's nothing to just take lightly. I mean, after I've never seen anybody go through that testing, and I've seen Orlando Rivera, Michael J. White. I've seen guys, the Hudsons, Shannon and Kevin Hudson, who are both world kickboxing champions. I mean, I've watched a lot of people go through that testing that were, nationally, internationally recognized martial artists that were, high level guys, and they were all done at the end of that testing. I mean, it's legit. It's a lot of kicking. It's a lot of work, but it's a great feeling when you go through it. You're joining a pretty elite fraternity. So I think it's really cool.
So, and what rank you hold in 8th degree in the Superfoot system? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. I'm an 8th degree with Bill, and he was. And I came on at the time. He was kind enough. I got in at my. He brought me in at the rank of my core style, and of course, I'd been training with Bill since the '80s. So it wasn't like I just met Bill and tested and got a high-ranking black belt. I'd worked out with Bill at seminars and practicing his material since the 80s, and had been teaching before I tested. And then so I came on board as a relative high rank, and then since I've tested up again. So, and there's only a few of us that hold 8th degree with Bill. I mean, it's relative high rank. And I work hard to honor that rank by being able, I work hard when I'm at doing Bill's stuff to make sure I'm doing Bill's stuff. I want to be able to insert his one-liners at the appropriate moment when I'm teaching his material and working his methodologies. But I feel really it's important as a Bill Wallace high rank. I feel like it's really important to be able to do his stuff his way, and then and especially when I'm teaching his stuff, I don't try to hide. I want to have his stuff down the way he wants it taught. Now, when I'm teaching Danny Dring stuff, I will mix and match and blend. But when I'm teaching Bill Wallace, and the differences, and then there's times I've been asked to teach seminars. Hey, will you blend what you've learned from Joe and what you've learned from Bill? How do you get sideways from a traditional boxing stance? Or how do you go from being really squared up to getting sideways? And what are some of the where I'm integrating footwork I've learned from Bill and integrating footwork I've learned from Joe. And it's funny, you look at some of the old, and Bill loves pointing this out too, is that you look at some of Joe's old stuff when he was competing, he fought sideways, but as Joe got more deeper into boxing, kickboxing, he started kind of changing his style up a little bit. But Joe had a brutal sidekick, and was known for his sidekick in competition. He just cut people in two with it. And to throw a sidekick, you got to be sideways. So it's interesting. It's interesting seeing those things. But I am honored to hold a high rank under Bill, and I try to uphold. To me, there's a legacy and a responsibility to be able to out of honor and out of respect, because I think it's important.
Still there? You froze up just a second. You still there?
Yeah, it froze up just there, but I can hear you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, well, let's just go ahead and wrap it up. This has been a great talk about, like you just said it there at the end, just that legacy, right? And that's kind of again, just the whole impotence on trying to do all these episodes with you is to kind of get your legacy all recorded, right? Because it's too much to do on a single podcast, for sure. So I appreciate you taking.
Well, thank you very much. It's really cool to get to visit and just share, because to Bill, shout out to his wife Jane. I hope they get to. I'm going to send this podcast and ask them, get him to watch. That when you get this, when it gets released, I'm definitely going to be sharing it and asking him to watch it. And I love his wife Jane. She's really, really sweet lady, and they're great people. They're just they're also part of my martial art fabric. They've been a part of my Bill. My love of Bill is throughout my entire martial art time. He's been a very, very profound influence to me through my whole martial art career, from the time I was just getting started. So it's really cool to get to kind of share that love, and it's been fun. There's obviously, there's other people, and spend 40 years, 40 plus years in the martial arts, and I've been influenced by several people, right? And holding rank in so many different styles, and it's kind of part of that jigsaw puzzle. It's all pieces of the puzzle, but they're all meaningful, and it's been a blast. I really appreciate the opportunity just to kind of to share this, because these guys, I love honoring my mentors, and I think it kind of explains, some of the uniqueness of of what we have in our team LDMA, because their teachings I've tried to pass on, but also some of their philosophies, on helping people grow as individuals. Your flavor as a martial artist is individual to you, and you've been influenced by so many great people. You've had a lot of good instructors in your development, and you've sought out. From being at a seminar with Hickson when he got burst in and presented his 9th degree. His red belt, his 10th degree. You were right there. Being Izuki, how cool is that? In a thing. So all of these stories kind of make up, I think, what we have, which is really cool in our team LDMA. And I do appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share some of this love and passion.
Well, thanks again, Mr. Dring. You kind of said it there at the end. That's a cool quote, like the fabric of part of your martial arts fabric. That's a real interesting way to think about all this. It's kind of like a quilt. We're piecing it all together, and it forms something real intricate, real unique when it's all done. But when you look at it from afar, it might be one of those awesome Dean Plank quilts or something.
Yeah. Awesome, all right, brother.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk to you later.
Much.
Yes, sir.
All right. Talk
to you
soon.